Hello, Jordan Chariton live. Status Coup. It is Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. Live and well in the United Corporations of America. Chris Garrett, if you're watching, I look forward to receiving the larger United Corporations of America flag you have so generously mailed to me. I don't know how we're going to set it up because Colin moved away from me once again. Colin's back in Texas. So I'll have to figure out how to set up the larger United Corporations of America flag behind me because I am not technologically or handyman savvy. Joining me now in his Unabomber backdrop is Steve Grumbine of The Real Progressives. Co-founder Real Progressives, host of The Rogue Scholar, among other things. Steve, I had a show lined up. We were going to talk about child labor as early as age 14 being back, talk about debt ceiling for dummies, among other things. We'll still get to some of that. But about an hour ago, Fox News, my first employer, if you don't know, my first employer in media, for those that don't know.
News guy.
Yeah. Fox News and Dominion settled for $787 million. The original price tag Dominion, which is the voting machine company, was looking for was $1.6 billion. I didn't think they were going to get $1.6 billion, but Fox, I believe, makes about $1 billion a year in profit. So this is a hefty price tag for Rupert Murdoch to pay. Fox will continue because there will be people stupid enough to continue watching. But I think there are broader. Oh, birthday. Happy birthday, Crystal. I think there are broader themes here than just Fox. We're going to get into it because it's significant. And I think that there are broader themes than just everybody dancing on Fox's parade. And then we could ask, where's the lawsuits against NBC News, CNN, the New York Times for their lies? Not to do false equivalencies because Fox deserves what's coming and what they got. Also, we're going to talk about at 5 a.m. this morning, actually 4:52 a.m. to be exact. Iowa passed new child labor laws that will allow children as young as 14 to work the night shift at restaurants and other businesses. And 15 and 16-year-olds to work longer hours. And this bill came after restaurants and other companies heavily lobbied the Republicans in Iowa. So good old days are back. They are going to make more money off the backs of children. So that's great. And a little bit later, we're going to have comedian Graham Elwood on, friend of the show, because Graham knows a lot more about the Jeffrey Epstein saga than I do. Graham also has a new political comedy special, so we'll play a clip from that. But I don't know if you know, Jamie Morgan, the criminal head of JP Morgan, he's being forced to testify in civil
Dimon.
Jamie Dimon, sorry. What did I say?
Jamie Morgan. They're one and the same, right? They're like
whatever. Jamie Dimon, who should be sitting in solitary confinement for bringing the global economy to a crashing halt. Him, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, all of them. Got off scot-free, of course. He's being forced to testify in the Epstein lawsuit because JP Morgan was Epstein's bank, and there were a lot of unusual activities going on with this sex trafficking, and JP Morgan didn't do anything. So we'll get to that later. Smash the like button, share this live stream so we can get it out to more people. Thanks so much for the super chat. Double K, we'll read them all at the end, but Double K got us started. So let's start with Fox. Disclaimer for YouTube, Joe Biden did win the election. There was no widespread election fraud, so we could just put that out there. So I think what happened here, media nerds who cover media were kind of dumbfounded why Fox even let it get to, because today was the first day of the case. It was supposed to be the first day of the case with opening statements and this and that. And there were reports that Rupert Murdoch, 92 years young, was going to be forced to testify. Tucker Carlson was going to be forced to testify. Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, all of them. Maria Bartiromo, like the Hall of Fame of swine over at Fox News. And there have been leaks after leaks after leak. And if you're a Fox News viewer, you might be learning all this for the first time because they certainly haven't been reporting any of it to you. But there have been leak after leak after leak of embarrassing text messages that clearly show not only does Fox lie to you, but as I knew, because I work there, its anchors don't actually believe what they're saying. It's one thing when like NBC News anchors push Russiagate and they're gullible enough to actually believe it. They're saying things that they actually believe. They're just uncritical, lazy idiots who don't know how to critically think, who believe whatever the CIA, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security tell them. They're buddies with their sources. So they believe, like Rachel Maddow, I actually think believes what she's saying. She's just a moron when it comes to Russiagate. But information came out, text after text after text, showing Tucker Carlson knew there was no election fraud, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, but they were deathly afraid of losing their audience, like the monster they created, because they created the monster. So they kept pushing it anyway. I think what happened here is Dominion probably has more damning text messages, emails, whatever, that they have not leaked out yet, that were going to be brought during the actual cross-examinations, the actual trial. And Rupert Murdoch and the Fox bigwigs deduced we could pretty much get away with what Trump said, shooting people on Fifth Avenue, and we'd keep our audience. But I think they thought if we actually let our stars testify, more damaging things that could actually like have our audience turn on us would come out. I think that's why they settled. $787 million, a shit ton of money, but it won't tank Fox News. So I think that's why they did it, to prevent their bigwigs from testifying and more damning information coming out. Let's just go through kind of a quick recap of some of the things that came out before the trial, if you don't know. Fox stars privately expressed disbelief about election fraud claims. Crazy stuff. This is from the New York Times. The hosts, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham, as well as others at the company, repeatedly insulted and mocked Trump advisors, including Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani, in text messages with each other in the weeks after the election, according to a legal filing on Thursday by Dominion Voting System. Quote, Sidney Powell is lying, by the way. I caught her. It's insane, Mr. Carlson wrote to Ingraham on November 18th. Laura Ingraham wrote, Sidney is a complete nut. No one will work with her. Ditto with Rudy. Carlson continued, our viewers are good people and they believe it, he added. I wonder why they believe it, Tucker. The messages also showed that such doubts extended to the highest levels of Fox, with Rupert Murdoch, its chairman, calling Trump's voter fraud claims really crazy stuff. So there's a lot of text messages that came out. That's just one thing. Then let's move on to Tucker himself. This is from Yahoo. 2 days after election 2020, Tucker Carlson texted his producer, warning that Fox News' decision to call the state of Arizona for Joe Biden on election night could spell doom for the network. That's according to a new court filing. Tucker said, quote, we worked really hard to build what we have. Carlson texted his producer, referring to colleagues who projected the results that Biden won Arizona. Carlson texted, those fuckers are destroying our credibility. It enrages me. Carlson added that he had spoken with fellow primetime commentators Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity minutes earlier, and that they were, quote, highly upset. At this point, we're getting hurt no matter what, he wrote. Pfeiffer replied that, quote, many on our side are being reckless demagogues right now. Of course they are, Carlson wrote. We're not going to follow them. He went on to say Trump was good at destroying things. He's the undisputed world champion of that. He could easily destroy us if we play it wrong. So, Steve, I want to get into the broader psychology here and the sickness of our media. And it extends to YouTube and other places. Here you have $1 million anchors that literally have the most eyeballs. And in the grand scheme, not that much. I mean, Fox's largest audience is only 3 million people a night. That's one, the country has 330 million, but it's still a good chunk of change. I almost would respect it more if I would respect it more if it was like a Steve Bannon, who I actually think believes what he believes. It's vile, but I think he's a true believer. But it's really sick. How do you teach people modern monetary theory? How do you teach people what's really going on? How do you teach people if we live in the economic Hunger Games, if the biggest loudmouth microphones are literally conning you? And it's not just Fox. There are other hosts that are not conservative, that are liberals, that also play a con job in a different way. But here you have these people, they were deathly afraid of a state being called for Joe Biden correctly. Arizona correctly was called for Biden. Tucker saying, we've worked 10 years to build this. He's basically saying, we have worked hard to build this house of lies. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
And they are just destroying. We have worked hard to, I'm sorry, build this cult. And they're destroying it by reporting accurately the results. And there's text after text and email after email with Fox of upsetting with factual information. I don't know how, and this didn't start with Fox. It started with Rush Limbaugh and all the partisan right-wing radio of the 90s, 2000s. I don't know how you unwind this, even with a nearly $1 billion settlement.
Well, I really regret Dominion settling, quite frankly, and I'm all about media transparency across the board. None of these folks represent what I want to hear. I don't pay attention to any of them. Let me just be full disclosure here. But this is particularly egregious, right? Because when you have, I mean, I look at small alt media platforms that have large, by alt media standards, large audiences, but they spew incredibly incorrect stuff. You go in front of 15, 20 people and tell the truth, but they're getting hundreds of thousands of views, and that becomes the de facto story. You have 3 million views, and now all of a sudden they tell 2 friends and so on. That becomes the de facto story. And you can say freedom of speech and freedom of expression and all this other crap, but when you're plain out, flat out lying, okay, that is a huge deal. Now, I don't have a lot of faith in elections to begin with. So news like this, news that Dominion is somehow or another rigging elections, screwing with the elections, doing this, doing that, and playing into this whole stop the steal crap. I mean, that's very, very damaging to what little teeny bit of faith anybody has in the voting process and the election process, which is something we should be able to hold our, to trust. But I don't think anybody can, even without that. But add the lies in, and it absolutely poisons democracy. It makes everything a guessing game. Everything's a conspiracy. Nothing is real. And literally, there are no facts anybody will hold true. That's just your opinion is constantly the refrain. So you're right. It makes teaching truth impossible almost. It makes the absolute ignorance that is spewed out is not by accident. And they are acknowledging flat out that we've created this cult. And if we suddenly tell the truth, we're screwed. I mean, that is exactly what Tucker was saying. So, all the other crappy news sources be damned. This should have been a case study in how to prosecute the very spirit of the law of freedom of the press, and the fact that lying is not protected speech. It should not be protected speech. I'll put it that way. And when proven to be wrong, this defamation suit should have gone all the way through. It should have pulled out every skeleton in the closet. And I wonder what might have happened with CNN, MSNBC, and all the rest of them, and the New York Times, quite frankly, and all the rest of them that put out garbage, that sit there and literally give you government talking points, propaganda, etc. I wonder what would happen to them. I wonder if they would have altered their ways based on watching what happened to Fox. But we'll never know that now, because money, these people have money coming out their ears. This may feel like a lot to us, but in their world, 1 year, whatever, I guarantee you Fox has more reserves, more investments, more everything. Drop in the bucket. Cost of doing business in their mind.
So to be clear, and maybe more details will come out, because this just came out an hour ago. So if more details come out, Colin, let me know. We don't know if part of the settlement, if Fox will have to apologize on air and acknowledge that they lied. That could be. I doubt it that they would agree to do that. They probably agreed to lied and knew they were lying. So that's one thing. But I think there's a lot of things I want to try to address in this. Number one, there's multiple forms of really damaging lies that come from the media. There are lies that are just reckless, coming from reckless access journalists. Like, remember Judith Miller at the New York Times, who was regurgitating lies from her sources like Dick Cheney and Scooter Libby and Donald Rumsfeld in 2001 and 2002 about Iraq weapons of destruction. There's those kind of lies that actually lead to wars and lead to hundreds of thousands of people dying and being maimed and wounded. Okay. Now, to the letter of the law, in our system, she cannot be prosecuted for lying unless, like this, we could prove she knowingly was reporting these lies and she knew it was a lie, right? But that's separate from, there really is, in our system of journalism, which is really just corporate stenography dressed up as journalism, there really is no accountability for people like Judith Miller, Jeffrey Goldberg, who literally is the head of the Atlantic, who was a booster for the Iraq war lies. I mean, I could go down the list. We don't have 7 hours. The people that got Iraq and so many other things so wrong, they fail upwards. Okay, I'm not saying it's the same thing as Fox, because I don't think these people knowingly lied about it. I think they're just bad journalists. They just believe whatever intelligence agencies and officials tell them. They literally, their job and their bosses tell them, go get cocktails with these people, buddy up with these people, so we could break stories, i.e. regurgitate their lies. But to be clear, we need to have a separate discussion about if you are a journalist and you get things so wrong to the point that wars are started or people are hurt or die, there needs to be some system of accountability. Maybe it's not massive, near $1 billion civil penalty, but maybe you should lose your job. Maybe you should not be hireable at other. So that's separate. I just want to make it clear as to not make this only about Fox News.
Let me ask you a question. Being that you are literally in this business, how much of their stories come from them and how much of it comes from support staff and producers and managers and other folks that are involved in the overall production? How much are they sitting there slaving around the day, digging up gold, or is it being given to them, put into a run list or a run sheet, and then here you go, here's your show? I am genuinely curious, because that would inform how much of a part they have to play, in my opinion, in being culpable. Because I could see the shit rolling downhill, and the little guy at the bottom, the reporter desperate to keep his job, is suddenly the one let go and said, they said egregious lies. But did they come up with them? Is it are they the master schemer? Was it run by a quality fact check desk or anything else?
Well, let's evaluate in the case of Fox News, because this came out. When I worked at Fox News, for those of you that don't know, I interned there. And then my first job out of college, I worked for Fox's website. So I wasn't quite like working on primetime, but I saw enough to know this is Republican propaganda. And I left. And then I went to MSNBC and realized this is liberal propaganda. Anyway, Fox has something called the Brain Room, which is basically their fact-checking organ. And it is pretty legit. I mean, they're just fact checkers. They're not really partisans. They're kind of research nerds. And Fox's Brain Room, and this has been reported, sent to Tucker Carlson's show, among other shows. There is no evidence for any of this election fraud. They have sent in the past, the Brain Room at Fox, there's like maybe 2 cases of voter fraud in America, or I don't know. And those anchors blew it off. Those executive producers at Fox, executive producers are very powerful, in some cases more powerful than hosts. They blew it off because they had
culpable.
Basically, they rode with the horse that they cultivated, which was Trump. There has been reports in the past that Tucker Carlson's producers would kind of comb 4chan and these conspiracy-laden right-wing conspiracy sites, and the Brain Room would have to kind of chime in. Yeah, and Tucker Carlson's show would send the Brain Room these links from these crazy sites, and the brain room would have to tell them, yeah, no, none of this is true, but Tucker would lead his show with it. So in the case of Fox, I think the anchors and the high-level producers, they know that this is a political operation, and they choose to do that. And they look in the mirror and they're okay with it. For whatever reason, they rationalize because they, in their mind, say, well, there's a liberal conspiracy on the other side, so it's not so bad what we're doing. But the problem here is you have a country before the 2020 election, there was already a powder keg. This country is a powder keg for a lot of reasons, and we talk about it. Societal rot, economic inequality, economic desperation, economic hopelessness. And when you have that level of psychological vulnerability, not just among, the stereotype of the Fox News viewer, they're not all redneck, stupid people, but just among blue collar workers who work at plants and now are working multiple jobs when they used to work one and be able to get a vacation for their family, people whose jobs have been offshored, et cetera, et cetera. When you have that level of stress and anger, people become vulnerable to conspiracies and lies. And this is dangerous because separate from the 2020 election lies, we already don't really have a democracy. I mean, that's just true. You can't call yourself a democracy if candidates who get more votes lose. I mean, that is our system. Candidates who get more votes, the popular vote, oftentimes lose. That's not a direct democracy. Well, I don't care what the founders wanted. The Electoral College exists to kind of squander democracy. I don't really think you could say we have a thriving democracy when in 2014, I think it was the Princeton study said we have an oligarchy because they looked at the patterns of our legislation, and over half the time, the donors get what they want. And I think 8 to 10% of the time, what is popular will passes. That's not a direct democracy, right? But if you already have kind of a democracy in air quotes, and you have the biggest audience and the biggest hosts on cable news pushing this insanity and this bullshit, then you really are officially ushering in a post-truth society.
Absolutely.
And as gun laws are loosened in Florida and Texas and everywhere, well, maybe the next time they do this, and there will be a next time, whether it's Fox or others, whether it's lying about elections or other things, what makes you think every time a January 6th won't be successful? We already have, and this is important, not just looking in the rearview mirror, what Fox did, and it wasn't just Fox, there's a lot of right-wing radio and Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk on YouTube and all these people, Charlie Kirk and Tim Pool and all these liars and grifters. There are now, because they convinced so many people to believe that the election was stolen and your democracy is at stake, now there are state after state after state. Literally, Republicans are trying to get rid of Republican Secretary of States, Republican County Board of Election heads to put in kind of MAGA people so that for 2024, they could try and overturn it state by state. That's what happens when the organ of conservatism, Fox News, pushes this bullshit. And I just want to read this because I think it says it better than I can. This is from Mediaite. Ex-Tucker producer feared accurately reporting on election conspiracies would, quote, insult viewers. It's like negotiating with terrorists. Now, I am not calling all Fox News viewers terrorists. My father is one of them. I don't think you're a terrorist. I just think you're politically a moron, which I've told him. But I'm just reading what Tucker's producer said. Private messages unearthed by the Dominion defamation suit against Fox News continue to throw off fascinating insights into the mental gymnastics of some at the network who were caught between a desire to accurately report on election conspiracies while also trying not to anger viewers who seem to have little interest in facts. The Washington Post published a lengthy profile on the role of Raj Shah, who left the Trump administration to work at Fox and was one of many senior executives caught up in the sordid affair, particularly as it pertained to outlandish claims made by Sidney Powell and how Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis distanced themselves from the Kraken lawyer. Unearthed messages reveal that Alex Pfeiffer, who previously served as producer for Tucker, expressed concerns about how to handle Powell's unhinged conspiracies about the voting machines including the outlandish idea that millions of votes were switched behind the scenes by a Venezuelan-backed company. They weren't, and it is not. The Trump legal team at one point sought to distance themselves from Powell, publicly saying she was practicing law on her own and not a member of Trump's legal team. I want to read this part. Despite his behind-the-scenes lobbying, Shah counseled a middle course in dealing with her claims on air. On the day after Carlson publicly challenged Powell, Shah and a Carlson producer weighed whether Carlson should devote time in his next show to Powell's claims that she had an affidavit that would link Dominion to Venezuela. Might want to address this, but this stuff is so fucking insane. Vote rigging to the tune of millions? Come on, Shah wrote. Carlson's producer responded, it is so insane, but our viewers believe it, so addressing again how her stupid Venezuela affidavit isn't proof might insult them. Shah advised that Carlson should mention the affidavit, noting it was not new info, not proof, but then quickly pivot to being deferential. Yeah, Pfeiffer replied, this whole thing is surreal. It's like negotiating with terrorists, especially dumb ones. Cousin fuck types, not Saudi royalty. So at the end of the day, and again, I'm truly not trying to, some of our viewers, I think, are conservative. They agree, they like our content. Idiots. So stick with me. But I think what's really important here is, there have been attempts to manufacture Tucker Carlson into some populist and he's anti-war. This coming from the left. Glenn Greenwald basically lives in his green room and just kisses his ass on air. It's pathetic. Jimmy Dore has gone in there and kissed his ass. I'm not against going on Tucker's show. If I was invited, I'd go on. But it would probably be the only time I was invited because I'd go down swinging. And I would call out his white supremacy. I'd call out his lies. I'd call out the anti-Semitic stuff he does. I'd call out the fact that you're such a populist. Why aren't you covering the theft of our money from the Fox News board? Why aren't you covering the union busting? Why aren't you covering what we're going to do next? Child labor laws. Why? None of this is important. So at the end of the day, what I believe is liberals will celebrate and cheer today because Fox is on the receiving end. Fox deserves it. In my view, I wish the trial would have went forward. But people need to realize that it's not just Fox. We have a media system just in different ways, either knowingly lie to you, like we have seen these Fox News hosts are knowingly lying to you, or are lying to you because they're not real journalists and they are more interested in being corporate ladder climbers, having primetime shows, being in the New York and DC cocktail circuit, than actually doing investigative reporting on power, on corruption, and injustice. That's why they don't cover Flint or East Palestine or, what the Federal Reserve is really doing to you. And I just want to say why we know. If you're still on the fence, I want to show a clip from Tucker Carlson. This is from March this year. It already has come out through text that he knew the election lies were bullshit, that he was just saying it because he was afraid of losing his audience. And I quote, "We've worked hard to build this, and I'm afraid of losing it." This is him in March when he was introducing footage that showed that January 6th was really just a picnic and not violent at all. Listen just to the first minute. He's still, after these text messages have come out, showing that he's a fucking liar. He's still
doubling down.
Bullshit. Let's show this.
We're about to show you surveillance footage from inside the United States Capitol. The images you'll see were recorded 26 months ago today, on January 6, 2021. Until now, politicians have kept this tape hidden from the public. There is no legitimate justification for that, and there never has been. On January 6, 2 years ago, thousands of protesters walked from a Trump rally on the ellipse outside the White House to the U.S. Capitol, where the certification of the presidential election was underway. The protesters were angry. They believed that the election they had just voted in had been unfairly conducted, and they were right. In retrospect, it is clear the 2020 election was a grave betrayal of American democracy, given the facts.
Wow. So riddle me this. His face, his this is, I'm so serious, I'm telling you the truth face, doesn't look any different than his "I'm telling you fucking lies" face. He's got the same exact face no matter what. Amazeballs.
Here's the thing. If I get caught in a lie, and I actually don't try to lie. There are very few times in my life, like white lies, just not to offend somebody, but I've never on air knowingly tried to lie. But if I was ever caught in a lie, I wouldn't double down. That's a certain level of I always get this wrong. Sociopathy, sociopathic behavior. When you are doubling down after all of these media reports showing you don't believe that the election was stolen, you think Sidney and Rudy and the whole gang is nuts. I'm not going to read it, but there's article after article. He was saying he hates Trump and can't wait till he could stop covering it. Then he went down and he just kissed the ring at Mar-a-Lago in this recent interview where he was drooling over Trump after saying he hates him. That is the definition of a con man. That is the definition of pathetic. And I can get in a sandbox with people I don't agree with. I could get in a sandbox with people that I vehemently think are wrong on most positions, if maybe we agree on some things. But I personally draw the line when I don't respect you. Yep. I draw the line when I know your motives I know you're not genuine. That it's not just a case where we disagree. I know you're a used car salesman. I know you're a charlatan. I know that you have bad motives. I know that you really don't have an ideology. To me, those are the most dangerous men and women when they don't actually have an ideology, because then they're just slippery and go with the wind. And I think Biden, truly, I think it's conservative. I don't genuinely think Biden has a core ideology other than,
neoliberal.
Right. So, to the person who says, so if you and Tucker agreed on an important issue and he invited you on his show, instead of focusing on the important issue, you'd blow up the interview by bringing up Tucker's white supremacy. Yeah, for two reasons. Number one, I don't actually believe that Tucker believes most of the things he's saying. So when you say agree on a core issue, I don't think Tucker Carlson, for example, is genuinely against the Russia-Ukraine war. I think he's against it because Biden is the one helping Ukraine. I think he'd be cheering it on if it was a Republican president. I think Tucker Carlson loves war. He just wants one with Iran and China. Don't ask me. Look at his previous statements. So it's like Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton and politicians, they could say a lot of things. You got to look under the hood and decide, do they mean it or are they just saying it? It's no different for media hosts. And secondly, I don't believe in compartmentalizing. Well, I agree with him on this, so I'll excuse the anti-Semitism. I'll just forget the anti-Semitism and the white supremacy and the great replacement theory stuff. Those aren't like minor disagreements. Those are disagreements in core values. Those are differences in who you are as people. So no, I wouldn't force it, but I would certainly push back on Tucker Carlson and condemn the things that I don't agree on. That's just me. And I don't want to make this about Glenn Greenwald and other people that go on his show. People could go on his show, but don't tell me, to any leftists, that you guys are such truth tellers and you're the real journalists and you're the real independent media when you constantly are going on a show with someone that you now know is knowingly lying. If you're a true journalist, your number one sacred responsibility is veracity, credibility, that you're getting the facts right, that you have a diligence and an adherence to making sure you get the facts right. And I believe associating with people that also have that adherence. If people could go on whatever show they want, but if you're continually drooling like a little dog over Tucker Carlson, which Glenn Greenwald is, when it's clear he's a liar, he's a con man, he doesn't believe, I'd say 75% of what he's saying, and you're doing it just to continue feeding your Substack, because that's the truth, building your right-wing audience, I don't want to hear anymore what a crusading journalist you are, and I don't really care what good journalism you've done in the past in the case of Glenn. Your final thoughts before we move on to 14-year-olds now working indentured servitude.
Yeah, I personally lose myself in the mountain of lies that we have to overcome just to get any kind of class solidarity, just to get people on the same page in this country with huge issues such as climate crisis and a lack of democracy in this country. We can't get people to even see eye to eye on that stuff. So when you see these disingenuous fucks in front of millions and millions of people, misleading them, creating the bigger fracture based on lies. Now, it takes so much more effort to debunk a lie than it does to tell a lie. And so as a result of that, I'm sorry. I really wish that just going back, I really wish Dominion would have taken this to the hole. I wish they would have gone all the way with it. I wish they would have drug it through the mud, forced them to show facts, forced them to testify, forced them to bring out all the stuff, because we cannot allow our journalists, period. I'm not worried about it being Fox. I think it needs to be all of them going through the same treatment, but I would love for it to have gone through Fox, because what Fox did is literally unforgivable. So that's my take. I really wish to God that they did not settle. That is the biggest. I wanted that all out in the open.
And I'll just say, to wrap this up, so we could just totally make clear our positions, because there will be whataboutism to this. And well, what about Rachel Maddow? And what about CNN?
Take her through
I
the
said
same
it
process
at the beginning. I believe, well, there is a difference between people who are knowingly lying and people who just lie because they're fucking lazy and they're not good journalists. But I believe even if you're not knowingly lying and you are reporting things that end up being true, and we all make mistakes, but there's levels of mistakes. I've made mistakes. I don't think any of them killed anyone. If you make colossal mistakes and your sourcing is Dick Cheney and these people, I don't think there's anything legally that could put you in jail criminally. But I think you should be held accountable. I think you should go into witness protection in the journalism industry and be unhireable. I think you should be tarred and feathered. If a doctor fucked up to that level, the doctor most likely would lose his license if his decisions led to millions of patients being killed. So why should it be any different by a journalist? This is a privilege. If you are an investigative journalist, you can get things wrong from time to time, but if you get things so recklessly wrong that it leads to wars like Iraq, frankly, Russiagate hasn't killed anyone yet. I would argue that it has helped lead us to where we are with Russia and Ukraine and the heightening of tensions. So I don't want to just make this about Fox, but to be clear, I also don't want to have a false equivalency. CNN and MSNBC, what they do in this instance is not the same thing at what Fox does. If something comes out where Rachel Maddow knew she was lying and CNN knows it's lying, we'll have a different discussion. But as far as I know, that hasn't happened. I want to move on and smash that like button. We'll keep reading your super chats at the end. Graham Elwood will be joining us soon. So Steve, while you were sleeping, and I was sleeping, Iowa, I don't know if you know that Iowa has been pushing to change child labor laws so that 14-year-olds could work late hour shifts. I guess just these restaurants and companies in Iowa don't want to pay like adults. If you have the tweet, Colin, this is from More Perfect Union. The Iowa Senate passed a child labor law before dawn. The bill let 14-year-olds work 6-hour night shifts, 15-year-olds work on assembly lines, and 16 and 17-year-olds serve alcohol. The Senate went through the night and voted on child labor at 4:52 a.m. Well, generally speaking, things don't pass in the middle of the night. Well, not the middle of the night, like dusk, that they're proud of. That's why, PR people and companies tell you, release it at 4:59 on Friday, right before the weekend, it'll get buried. Let's play this clip. This is from an Iowa Democrat kind of explaining the process of what happened.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's just about 2 o'clock in the morning here in the Iowa Senate, and things have ground to a halt because for the first time, as long as anyone here can remember, the Republican floor manager, so this is the person who's actually running a bill, refused to answer a direct question from a Democratic senator about the substance of the law that we're actually debating tonight, which is about rolling back protections against child labor in our state. This is completely unprecedented, and we're told that this is a new policy from Iowa Senate Republicans based in response to a Supreme Court ruling here in the state of Iowa that used debate on the Senate floor to strike down a law that Republicans had supported. So now what we're being told is that Republican senators are not going to answer questions about legislative intent. Obviously, this is a huge departure from how the Iowa Senate, which is a deliberative legislative body, has operated since its inception 150 years ago. And we in the minority have been in caucus now for several hours. We're going to get back out on the floor and keep debating this bill. We're going to continue to ask questions. Even if Republicans refuse to answer them, the people of Iowa deserve to hear these questions asked, and they deserve to have these questions answered. We deserve a state.
Okay. And by the way, Democratic Party, they're fine with exploitation. They just want it to be for adults. They don't want it to be for 14-year-olds. So a little better, but they're fine with exploitation. I don't even know where to start. By the way, there was a shit ton of lobbying by restaurants and other companies to make this happen in Iowa. But I don't know if it was with you. I said kind of tongue in cheek a while ago, hey, we're kind of getting to the point where, Norfolk Southern, just to save money, they'll just get rid of their cleanup crew and have kids do it. And without masks to save a buck in East Palestine and elsewhere. It seems that this is the beginning because other states, including Arkansas, they're trying to do similar things.
Just remember the core components of the free market and these and believe me when I say this, neoliberals are not just Democrats. Neoliberals are Republicans too. And that whole entire approach is about privatization, removing regulation, and literally allowing the free market to do what it wants, allowing freedom. These kids deserve freedom, freedom to work late at night, freedom to go to school sound asleep, freedom to fail classes, and freedom to retake the grade again. I mean, this is the kind of asinine beliefs that the small government, low regulation, defund public services, enhance the private sector assholes behave. And, whether or not the Democrats want them to just do it to adults or not, it doesn't really matter. In the end, this is a larger than this moment. And you were right to tie it to Norfolk Southern. This is all about deregulation. I would fully expect to see a hell of a lot more deregulation coming up. I would expect to see that become the new thing. It is 100% the ideas of the GOP. Their entire approach to things is deregulation. The Democrats, of course, will put on a good show that they're fighting the good fight, that they're going to stop this massive craziness of the whatever, but they are going to allow it just the same. And we're going to be back. It's literally going to be jumping into a time machine and going backwards to live before some of these protections were put in place. And these protections were put in place because things got really dire. And we saw that happen with the deregulation of the finance systems, of the banks, of shadow banking, and of all the cross between investment and savings. And you saw what happens every time they deregulate. There's somebody there that understands what this means. They capitalize on it, and then everybody pays the price for it. And then they say, oh, God, what are we going to do? We have to fix this. And then they go back to try and regulate. So, Jordan, you're going to see a lot more of this. And the worst part is that many of the quote unquote Democrats that are coming out are indistinguishable from Republicans in this way. So this is not going to just be a partisan issue. You're going to see bipartisan support for rolling back these protections because they don't know any better. I genuinely believe that. And also I believe the pay is just too damn good from the donor base to make sure that they don't stand in the way of these kinds of rollbacks and deregulations. But beware, it's just going to happen on a much larger scale in many other ways. We've just begun to see the destruction. Fucking kids working that time of night. I tell you right now, when my kids stay up past 10 o'clock at night, I'm angry as fuck. But more importantly, I know they wake up the next morning crab ass as hell, and then we get a note back from the teacher saying they had a crappy day at school and they got in trouble, blah, blah, blah. Can you imagine when the poor kids that have to go to work because mommy and daddy can't afford everything, and these poor children are going to work, and they're probably black and brown, other disadvantaged folks out there, and they're going into school. It's going to be like, see, here we go. More proof, blah, blah, blah. It's sad, but it's predictable. And as long as people stay aloof on deregulation and don't pay attention to privatization and pay attention to this kind of mindset, we're not going to have the kind of groundswell we need to fight back against it, whether it be outside the electoral system or within it. So
Yeah,
you could expect to see a hell of a lot more of it.
I'll just end with this because we're about to bring the political vigilante himself, Graham Elwood, on the show. Here's what's going to happen, folks, because all we've been hearing about is this whole labor shortage, right? There's so many jobs and not enough people to fill it. Yeah, because they want to pay next to nothing in a fucking free market that people can't afford to live, and people are having to ration necessities because of the still shit wages that are being paid. But all we hear about on CNBC and, you know, all these fake journalists on the corporate media, there's a labor shortage and companies are really hurting for labor. So let's start with, we'll let 14-year-olds work the night shift at the, I don't know, Crack and Barrel or whatever that is, Denny's. And then maybe, maybe they'll come in and work the factory floor, but we'll let them leave at 5 so they could go do their homework. And before you know it, there's going to be off the books, a lot of more off the books kind of stuff with the kiddies. And this is also part of the sickness that is the United Corporations of America, where it's freedom to allow children to get the freedom, the taste of freedom to work at a young age. How about a little self-exploration for our teenagers? How about a little time for them to go read? Time for them to go do pottery or fucking, I don't know, archery, not work. Time for them to exercise. Not a lot of that going on in America among our kids. I mean, I could go on, but it's just fucking vile. And there's going to be a lot more of it. And don't believe it when the Democrats aren't going to be like authoring the bills to let 14-year-olds work. But don't be surprised if you start to learn down the road that in states with Democratic leaders, this shit is happening too. Steve, your last thoughts on this?
Last thoughts are wait for the debt ceiling fight that's going to tie back to the subject when you find out that McCarthy and the gang are making, in order to keep the government open, that they're going to have to do massive spending cuts. And it's going to start with telling Biden to kill his little teeny puny student debt cancellation, wipe that off the table, and every other possible thing that helps the little people while simultaneously providing and reigniting the $2 trillion tax cut for the rich. And don't get me wrong, that tax cut will help people inadvertently, accidentally, downstream, very, very trickly downy, but it will help. So you're going to have some people that are going to get benefit from that. But for the most part, it's going to create pressure on families, and you're going to see more and more kids having to do something to fill that spot. And it's going to come as a result of these asinine spending cuts. And once again, our country is still ill-equipped to handle the question of the debt ceiling or the deficit or any of the other things. We're still mind-numbingly 8-bit about it, walking into walls and walking in one direction. We've got to fix that. It's going to be a shit show. That's it.
Steve, can you use a laugh or two? We all need
I could use a lot of laughs. Let's bring them on, man.
Friend of the show, Graham Elwood, joining us now from where are you these days? Still,
I'm in the beautiful neoliberal hellscape of Los Angeles. It's
you're back. All right. Graham Elwood, political vigilante. Check him out on YouTube and elsewhere. I wanted to bring you on. There's Jeffrey Epstein news. I haven't followed it as much as you have, but even in death, i.e. Suicide, it's connected to Wall Street and a whole lot of other stuff. So Jamie Dimon, a criminal vulture that if we had laws that applied to everyone would be in solitary confinement for tanking the global economy, which I know affected you in the foreclosure crisis. He's now being forced to testify in Epstein lawsuits over the sex trafficking. And JP Morgan basically was his bank of choice. And there was a lot of anomalies that went on with banking and things that should have been flagged, but weren't. So JP Morgan naturally says, Jamie Dimon, the head of JP Morgan, naturally says, I didn't know anything. Can you tell us your thoughts? I think he's going to have to testify for at least 7 hours. I don't know if it will be made public. I hope so. But how is this connected to the overall criminal cartel that is Wall Street?
I think it's, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Epstein hung himself with a paper t-shirt, and we should all go back to sleep and argue about some celebrity dating somebody else. Anybody, is there Andrew Tate news we could talk about? Is that something we can get mad about? No, Jordan, you bring up.
There is Britney. Everyone's worried about Britney. I do know that. Everyone's worried about Britney Spears.
I heard that Andrew Tate's dog was going to date Taylor Swift's dog, and I mean, if they don't, I mean, I don't know what to do. And then I heard Andrew Tate's Lamborghini is also falling in love with somebody else's Lamborghini. So it's just like, that's what keeps me up at night. The fact that the banking industry has worked hand in glove with a global pedophile sex trafficking ring, whatever. But in all seriousness, you bring up excellent points here. And one of the things that was uncovered when they really got into, when Epstein was arrested in July of 2019, and then, hung himself with a paper t-shirt. He was on suicide watch wearing paper clothing, and his cellmate was a former corrupt cop. It's all, don't ask any questions. One of the things that Epstein did, right, how his business model, he had this like fake hedge fund that had all this money in it. And they're like, well, how is this working? So one of the things Epstein would do, he would have one of the parties at his either compound in New Mexico that the Clintons visited numerous times, or his island that the Clintons and the Trumps visited numerous times, among other people, is some powerful person would be approached by Epstein's butler and say, would you like a massage by a beautiful young woman? Oh, sure. She would be a child, underage, perform sex acts. They would videotape it and then go, we've got videotape of this. So then they would use them for leverage. And then that person, and oftentimes would make suddenly an investment or a donation to his hedge fund. So basically they found out his hedge fund was doing no business. It was investing in nothing. And so the only way to make this kind of stuff happen legally is to use massive banks like JP Morgan Chase. So, this revelation isn't surprising me at all. I'm always like, when I hear that, okay, they're going to depose Jamie Dimon for 7 hours. I'm like, okay, but will we get that publicly? And that's where I'm always like, they seem to always do these sort of performative theatrical trials to say, well, we got him. It's always, it's similar to the like police departments, with the Catholic Church, even it's the few bad apples, right? We got the bad apple. The system isn't broken. We just got the bad apple. So that's what, there's a great interview with Maria Farmer that she did with Whitney Webb, where Maria Farmer was one of Epstein's victims, and she came out publicly in the 90s. And one of the things she said was that Epstein was middle management compared to the global sex trafficking ring, and that, the head of Victoria's Secret, who, God, now his name is blanking on me right now, Les Wexner, he's never mentioned. And she referred to him as the head of the North American snake, right, in terms of the global sex trafficking ring. So I say that to show you that I'd love to see Jamie Dimon get arrested and be held accountable. But look what happened with Ghislaine Maxwell, right? First of all, and you got to look at when I talk about the Andrew Tate, I'm joking, but I'm being real about how the smoke and mirrors work. So on May 3rd last year, when the SCOTUS leak came out about, they were thinking about getting rid of Roe v. Wade. Now, Roe v. Wade is a very serious issue, and I support it, a woman's right to choose. But when all that was happening in the news, on that same day, Judge Allison Nathan made a ruling that, and Judge Allison Nathan was in the Quill and Dagger, which is the Skull and Bones sister organization. Skull and Bones is at Yale for men. Quill and Dagger is for women. She was put in office by Obama and Biden and all of these people. She made a ruling on May 3rd of last year that 20 years was the maximum sentencing Ghislaine Maxwell could get. That was on May 3rd, right? So then her sentencing came out in June, right around the same time as R. Kelly. R. Kelly got 30 years. She got 20. All right. So then in late June or July, I forget the actual timeline, when the Supreme Court actually got rid of Roe v. Wade, again, very serious issue, and people should be protesting this. On that same day, my guess is you and your co-host here were not aware of the fact, and this isn't a slam on you, this shows you how the distraction worked. Tell me if you heard this. On that same day, Ghislaine Maxwell was moved from New York to a minimum security prison in Florida.
I did hear that.
You did hear that.
Well, and I wonder if she's getting the Epstein bed and breakfast treatment in prison, where she gets to leave and go to her office.
I'm sure she's getting something like that. What is widely believed, because she has named 0 people, there's been no pressing for her to name 0 people, is that she made a deal saying, I've got all these names, and told her powerful friends, if you guys put me in a real prison, then this goes out. Then all your names goes out. So when that happened, so to cut forward to today of Jamie Dimon, so this also could be used as, is there someone else in the corrupt banking world that's trying to make a play on JP Morgan Chase? This is just my theories. Now, I'm not getting into facts at this point. This is my theories, but just watching the way they operate, I find it highly unlikely, and I hope I'm wrong for the victims of Epstein's sake. I find it highly unlikely that they're going to come out of this deposition and say, yep, got him, guilty, here's all the names, because they haven't done that with anybody. And I've seen them put this to sleep. Again, I'll go back to December of 21, I believe, which was when the Maxwell trial was happening, right? Very quick trial. There was only 4 victims allowed to testify. In the Henry Nassar case, or I forget his first name, Larry Nassar, the gymnastics coach that molested all those girls, they had something like 90 victims testify at that trial. Ghislaine Maxwell, they had 4. There was 118 pages of flight logs that were introduced as evidence in the Maxwell trial, that new flight logs. In it, we found out, so prior to that trial, December 21, there was only 1 flight log showing Trump on a plane. There's 26. Bill Clinton had been on 26. Hillary Clinton's been on 2. There'd only been 1. In that trial, they found 4 new flights that Trump had been on, totaling 5. Now, you would have thought MSNBC and CNN would have gone nuts with this information and screamed from the mountaintops, Trump's guilty, he's guilty, we got him, we knew him, ties to Epstein, ties to Epstein. They didn't. Why didn't they? Because then everyone would have to be screaming about the Clintons. And so,
or some of their anchors might have been at parties.
Yeah, exactly. Or yeah. Or whatever. And so I give you all of this information as a framework going into this Dimon deposition to show you that, like, don't get your hopes up. Yes, Dimon and Chase is guilty. Yes, the banks have been used. There's no way you can run a global pedophile sex trafficking ring without the help of the banks. There's just no, you can't, there's no way you can do that. And there's many other banks. I think,
it's like saying the banks weren't aware what Bernie Madoff was doing.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just like, I know it's always the bad apple. Like, no one in Hollywood knew what Harvey Weinstein was doing. We had no idea. No, you had a wall of gold trophies that were telling you, shut your mouth if you want to win another one.
Steve, let me ask you, because I know you got to go. So I want to just ask you, what does it say that we, all this sanctimonious talk when they're indicting Trump, and great, indict Trump. But when they say nobody's above the law, what does it say that when you are I think Jamie Dimon's a billionaire, when you are the billionaire head of a top 5 bank in the world, I think top 1 in America, actually, and you could just throw up your hands and say, I wasn't part of that. It was that division's head, or it was risk management that blew it. And there's no criminal liability for somebody like Jamie Dimon, even if, argument's sake, you weren't directly involved. That's, to me, criminal negligence. You're the head of the bank. There are
Absolutely. The
crimes
buck's gotta
going
stop
on
somewhere.
through your bank because the sex trafficking is going on due to the mechanisms. He's using your banking system, and there's no negligence. There's no, I mean, Norfolk Southern, they could poison a town. There's no criminal crimes for that. Exxon could poison water, air. The banks could take down the global economy, which kills people. You say austerity is death and theft. But Jamie Dimon, there's no criminal liability, and you're the head of the bank? How is this possible?
We don't live in a world of laws for everyone. We live in a world of laws for us little people, and the big people get away with murder, literally. I mean, it literally is that big club, and we ain't in it. And I mean, I think that people have a very, very romantic view of this idea of the rule of law. And what they don't have is a very decent understanding of class analysis. And when you recognize that we are not in the 1%, and the 1% plays by an entirely different set of rules than we do, it starts to make sense to you. And it's, you know, unless we're willing to do something about it, it's just good talking points to chit chat about over a beer. I mean, this is real shit, and it's happening to us in front of us, you know, to us, through us, and around us. And we could talk about it day in, day out, but until somebody does something about it, it's just going to keep happening. So there's nothing much more to say than that, unless we're willing to take direct action. And
Steve,
I've seen nothing to suggest otherwise.
Before I go back to Graham, Steve, pump your shit. Real Progressives, Rogue Scholar, tell people where they can find you.
Well, let me pump the shit here real quick. So on Saturday, 8 a.m., you can catch our podcast, Macro and Cheese, on all podcasting platforms. Please do check it out. We have Carl Jha talking about Taiwan this week, so you won't want to miss it. You also have me Monday, Wednesday, Friday noons on Real Progress in Action for my show called The Rogue Scholar. Please do check that out. And also, you know, Tuesdays, unless some breaking news hits, I'm usually sitting here right beside Jordan. So check us out. In the meantime, thank you all very much. And Jordan, I'll talk to you later. It's good to see you, Graham.
Nice to see you, Steve.
Yep.
So, Graham, getting back to Epstein, what I find incredible about this is you have this sanctimony coming from, I mean, let's just look at today. We started with the Fox News settlement over knowing lies. I mean, they knowingly lied about the election. It's in text messages, all this. But here, you even said it. Clinton was on the plane 26 times. Bill Clinton came out saying, oh, no, I was only on. No, he actually said, I don't think I was ever on the plane.
No, he lied. He said he was on, I think he said he was on only on 4 times.
Right.
So,
and there's actual manifest that shows he was on 26 times. It's not reported by the Clinton News Network, CNN. It's not reported by MSNBC. So they know by not reporting it, that's lies by omission. I think it's pretty significant if the former president, Democrat or Republican, had more involvement that he's letting on with a barbaric sex trafficker. Trump, too. Trump had more involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, not to mention folks in academia, Alan Dershowitz. But
Hollywood. I mean,
yeah,
it's, you know, you bring up an excellent point about this sort of selective outrage and selective justice that we have here. I mean, even the Trump indictment, it's like, of course they had to indict him on some hush money to a porn star, because if they indicted him on war crimes, well, then they'd have to indict, you know, Obama and the Clintons and the Bush, you know, they'd have to indict everybody, every president for being as corrupt as they are. So it just shows you, and again, okay, Trump or, you know, Fox News. Okay, Fox News willfully lied about you know, the election, which helps for January 6th. Okay, great. Then let's hold CNN accountable and the Washington Post accountable for lying about Ukraine, what weapons of mass destruction. I mean, on it, we could go on, you and I, because, and so it's just and with regard to Epstein, it's so blatant. It's such in our faces. Like you got to be kidding me. Like if and it's so obvious, the most powerful people in the world. I mean, it's a thing. I've met people from all different walks of life, all different political ideologies, and we all agree Epstein didn't kill himself. I mean, we could argue about any number of other things, but they would be like, oh yeah, but Epstein didn't kill himself. And when this, especially, and so I had on my show a retired police detective, Eric Oldenburg, right? He was with the Phoenix Police Department, retired honorably after 24 years. And his last 10 years or so, he was a child crimes investigator, which means he investigated child exploitation films and pedophile rings. And I've had him on my show numerous times. And I said, let me ask you something, Eric, because we went to college together. I've known him a long time. I said, if you were the lead investigator in the Ghislaine Maxwell case, what would you be doing? Just tell me professionally as investigator. He goes, oh, Graham, no pedophile acts alone. He goes, I would be getting the names of everyone on that flight list. And he goes, anybody that went to Epstein's Island, maybe they even just went once. There's no way they went there once, and that was the only time they had sex with a kid. That means they came home and figured out how to do that if they weren't already doing that. So he goes, he goes, Graham, I would be going after all of the people on the flight logs. We would be leaning on her. If she wasn't a billionaire, and whose dad was in Mossad, then we would be going. He goes, Graham, he just went for me. It's a great interview. I have a whole Epstein playlist on my YouTube channel. Watch it. He goes through beat for beat what a professional investigator, not a YouTube comedian who is, armchair investigator, a professional investigator, how he would go after these people. And he goes, the fact that none of this is happening, he goes, I go, is this ever kind of happening? He goes, nothing to this scale, but sometimes as an investigator, if the mayor says, don't investigate this or that, he goes, you have, and he goes, that's what's happening, but on a massive scale. So it's crazy. I mean, the joke I made was, I guess Ghislaine Maxwell acted alone and trafficked all those kids into an empty field. Like this.
And also, I think, when I talk about Flint, I say it's not just about the water. It's about corruption. It's about racism. It's about privatization. Now, this
class,
of course, it's not just about, of course, first and foremost, it's about children and, barbaric actions, but it's also about a global corruption syndicate. It's also about political corruption. It's also about legal corruption. I mean, there's so many things wrapped into, first and foremost, sexual assault and those kind of things. But what I find amazing, on one end, you got Republicans, oh, we care about life. We care about life. Well, apparently not the life of 12, 13, 14-year-old girls. Democrats, we care about choice. We care about choice for women. Well, these girls didn't have a choice.
Oh,
so Republicans or Democrats, we care about all these things when we're writing the political fundraising emails and around campaign time, but not in the practice of Epstein. Like you said, it defies common sense that there aren't a whole lot more people. It also defies common sense in any legal process, like you said, and that police officer told you. You'd lower Maxwell's penalty to basically a glorified, you'll serve 3 years in prison, good behavior, you'll be out after a year or so. Give us the whole list so we could go after even bigger fish.
Yeah.
You can't look what you're not find. You can't find what you're not looking for, and they're not looking for it.
Well, to give you, to fuel your point even more, he told me when he was on the show, this is probably 4 or 5 months ago, maybe 6 months ago. He said, Graham, I just testified about a case that's been going on in Arizona for 10 years. He goes, that's the other thing. We should be indicting. There should be every day, every week, new indictments coming out of the Epstein, coming out of Maxwell. They found this information. They found that. He goes, that he told me about in the state of Arizona, there's a minimum 10 or 15, I forget the number, but it's pretty severe, like 15 years for each photo of child exploitation that you're in possession of. Minimum sentencing, right? And so they busted this guy, and it was a 10-year trial, not because the guy was like rich and kept filing for appeal, but because they kept finding more and more stuff and more people. And he was telling me this, he goes, Graham, so he goes, I'm retired. and I'm still testifying about a case from 10 years ago because the Phoenix Police Department keeps uncovering more and more and more. And that's just a law in Arizona. Each state is a little different, but you're trying to, so that's because I brought up this fact. I go, they seized, we saw it. Remember in July of 19, we saw the guys in the FBI jackets wheeling out from Epstein's penthouse in New York City. Hard drives, file cabinets, photos. So where is all that stuff? So I'm assuming New York has some type of similar law like Arizona. So isn't there enough? And everyone in those, and then photos of someone committing an act against a child? Because he's explained this to me numerous times that world of child exploitation films, they use the movies and the videos as currency to trade with each other. It's also like to see, are you one of us? You have to give me to, so that's one of the ways they uncover these rings. And the people that are, the horrible, evil people that are making these films and photos. And he goes, Graham, they should have been going through all of this stuff seized from Epstein, not just in New York City, but on his Virgin Islands compound and his compound in New Mexico, the one the Clintons visited.
By the way, the Epstein, one of the documentaries they saw on Netflix, a groundskeeper on the Virgin Islands said, I saw Bill Clinton on his porch with Jeffrey Epstein. Bill Clinton says I was never on his island. Well, the groundskeeper said, yeah, I know what the president looks like. He was on Jeffrey's front porch.
Yeah. And part of this is, and again, Maria Farmer, whose sister testified in the Maxwell trial, talked about how she was trafficked as a teenager. So I forgot to bring this up too. So you brought up the banking industry, since that's relatable to JP Morgan Chase and Jamie Dimon, but also the modeling industry. That's where Les Wexner comes in with owning Victoria's Secret. That's how Maria Farmer and a lot of these young girls were trafficked. Virginia Roberts talks about this. And so it's so extensive, the network, but it's so many powerful people that I can see how the average citizen gets a little overwhelmed. I've been overwhelmed covering this. I've had to take breaks from covering it because it's so dark and awful. And what you come to the conclusion with this hard evidence, and when I'm literally interviewing a former cop telling me this is what they should be doing. And when the fact that they're not, so the Phoenix police, a former cop from the Phoenix Police Department is a better detective than the Department of Justice? Is that what you're telling me? Than the FBI? Like everyone in the
Department
FBI?
of Justice has apparently been investigating Hunter Biden for 25 years now. And they still need a little more time. So yeah.
A few more minutes, just a few more. So you see the scope of this and what really, to get at the core of this too, and it's something that Whitney Webb talks about, is you can't overlook the intelligence aspect of this as well. So you've got banking, you've got the fashion industry, but this was Acosta when Epstein's first prosecution in 2009 in Florida, when he got arrested in Florida. Acosta, who later was appointed by Trump. So anybody who thinks Trump doesn't have ties to it is that's laughable. There's just too much evidence. Both him and the Clintons, they're all awful they're awful around the horn, but also with regard to Epstein. So Acosta, one of the things Acosta said, he is quoted as saying that he was told to back off because he was on Epstein because he was a CIA asset. That's one of the reasons when Acosta was like, why did you give him such a light sentence in 2009? He goes, I was told to because he was a CIA asset. So he was told this, which is, again, this is how the intelligence apparatus works. When I first was on your show earlier, when you first asked me, and I said, this is why the banking industry is involved. So this is they get the guy, they get him on camera committing the acts with the child, and then they say, we have this video of you, so you need to donate money. Well, then also the intelligence community goes, we need that video, because now they can go to that senator, congressman, president, royal family member from either English or Saudi royal family. Multiple royal families are connected to Epstein. And they can say, now the CIA can come in and say, we've got evidence of this, so we need you and John Kiriakou, again, I'm similar to you in that I like dealing in facts, not conspiracy. So then John Kiriakou, who I interviewed on my show, CIA whistleblower, verified this for me. He goes, the CIA doesn't say you can go get kids for a pedophile if you got to leverage them as an asset. But if you were to do that, your superiors would go, all right. So a former CIA employee, asset whistleblower, John Kiriakou, verified that the CIA would have no problem going, look, we need that guy. We need leverage on this person as an asset. And we found out that they're a pedophile. So go get some kids for that kid, videotape it. And then we got that guy in our back pocket. John Kiriakou verified this. Again, it's on my Epstein playlist. You can watch my interview with John Kiriakou. You can watch my interview with multiple interviews with Eric Oldenburg, former child crimes investigator. So this stuff is completely, it's not crazy. I'm not some crazy flat earth lizard person, conspiracy theorist. There's just too much hardcore evidence. And again, when you've got flight logs, when you've got quotes from people, you've got interviews with Epstein victims, you've got people like the groundskeeper verifying all this stuff. And then, so it's really, my guess is the diamond thing, there probably is some ulterior motive, or they're going to just do slap on the wrist, or they're going to do that's what they tried to do with Epstein. We got him. No more pedophiles. There's no more pedophiles in the world. We got the one bad guy. It's over. And then they try to seal it off. That's a thing that Maria Farmer said, and numerous other people that have studied this. They always try to seal it off. Again, like the bad apple, couple of bad priests in the Catholic Church. It doesn't go all the way to the Vatican. They always try to seal it off. There's not a global pedophile sex trafficking wing, Jordan. There's just a couple of bad apples, and we got them. Maxwell's arrested. Epstein hung himself because he felt so bad about his crimes. It's over. So that's how you got to look at this and see what happens of the diamond thing.
Well, we know what's going to happen. When Trump walked in, the judge ruled this will not be televised. It will be private. The case today, before it settled, the Fox case was not going to be, you weren't going to get video or audio. Case after case after case, unless it's a poor white person like Casey Anthony or one of these made-for-TV crime syndicates, they'll air that for the commercial value ratings. Casey Anthony, Alex Murdaugh, these people. But not if you're a former president, not if you're a big media company, and so on and so on. If you're rich, powerful, it'll be private. Transcript sealed. Some of it will leak, but overall, it'll be tight. And yeah, it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Say one thing to, again, back up the point you're making. I like dealing in evidence, right? So the Ghislaine Maxwell was a federal trial. Now, the federal courts do not allow cameras in their courtrooms. Okay, that's fair, right? So they had cameras in the Johnny Depp trial was happening around the same time. So there was just the sketch drawings. There's still not one mugshot photo of Ghislaine Maxwell anywhere to be found. Not one. If you go on the DOJ's website and I looked up 3 big cases: Maxwell, Whitey Bulger, and the MS-13, right? In the Whitey Bulger and the MS-13, if you go to the DOJ's website, I invite your audience to do this right now. You'll see, again, sketch drawings from those trials, but then you will see Whitey Bulger's mugshot. Boom, front and center. You'll see the MS-13, all these scary looking Latino gangbangers, all on the DOJ's website. You go to the Ghislaine Maxwell, no mugshot of Ghislaine Maxwell on the DOJ's website. Am I crazy?
No. It's crazy. Speaking of, you mentioned your playlists on your channel. There's also another thing people could watch. Graham Elwood's political comedy special. We have a short clip, and then you can find out where you could get this. Let's look at some of your new comedy special. I just want to tell a quick story, actually, and a thank you. In 2019, I believe it was,
Mhm.
you and Ron Pacone did a comedy special in New York City. I think it was like my third date or so with my now wife. So I brought her, and I didn't think she really knew that like I had a following. She just thought I was some like YouTube guy in my garage. But anyway, so I came and it was great. You and Rod did a great job. And then after, there was like a line of people wanting to meet me and like get pictures with me. And I got, I don't know if she's watching, but my wife was a little hot and bothered. Like, wow, like this guy, there's an audience for him. And then she realized like, oh, like he, is kind of people like Jordan. And anyway, we're married and just had a kid. So thank you for that. But Graham.
Well, I hope you name the kid either after me or call the kid political vigilante or something. Just some dumb little.
I tried to name her Flint, but that didn't go over. So where could people find your comedy special? I'm sure Netflix and everywhere else was.
Well, it's not on Netflix. It's actually on YouTube. If you go to All Things Comedy, which is Bill Burr's company, they're distributing it. It's on All Things Comedy's YouTube channel. But the best way really is to just go to I have it embedded. If you go to GrahamElwood.com, you can watch the special. It's 64 minutes long. It's very political. I call it the two-party system, like I just did in that clip. I call it the war machine in a very funny way. And also, if you go there, Graham Elwood, then you can get tour dates. Like I'm going to be in Hawaii, Maui, May 28. Maui, May 27. Kona, May 28. God damn, I'm screwing this up. Sorry, it's April.
Just go to a fucking website.
Go to my website. I'm in Hawaii the end of April. I'm in Arizona in May. Go to GrahamElwood.com. And then another reason to really watch my special is I've had 6 ads. I like boosted posts on Instagram to promote my special. And I just took little clips like the one that was one of the clips I put out there just to grow my audience and to get more people to watch the special, right? I set aside marketing dollars and all 6 of them have been rejected as too political. Well, 5 were too political. And then 1, I was like, all right, I'm going to do a non-political clip. And I put a clip about what it was like dating, being single alone and trying to date during COVID. And I was flagged for that as I was trying to sell dating advice. So that got rejected.
I thought they were going to be like too vulnerable.
It's too mushy. Just back with the dick jokes. So yeah, I've been, my YouTube channel's been demonetized for over 2 years. This is, and this, you've been throttled, you know what it's like. And I'm getting, I'm too political. I had a billboard in Times Square that was rejected because it was too political. And here's what the billboard said: Graham Elwood live show Tuesday, October 18th, BroadwayComedyClub.com.
When they say too political, they mean you're too anti-war, you're too anti-capitalist, you're too mentioning Jeffrey Epstein. So we'll approve ads from fascists. We'll approve ads from warmongers and criminals. Mm-hmm. But you're not down with the MIC. We're not down with you.
Yep. And that's just it. If I was just like a liberal only saying Republicans are bad, I don't think I'd get censored like this. If I was more conservative, just saying, oh, the liberals are bad, I don't think I'd be censored like this. But when you say the system is broken, like you say, well, this is the war machine is a problem, and Jeffrey Epstein, as we just discussed, is tied into all of this, then they're like, nope. They don't want you unifying anybody. They don't want you like supporting labor movements or anything like that. That's when they go after you hard.
Well, I tell the audience, please go to GrahamElwood.com, check out his comedy special, and make sure to bookmark Graham Elwood's YouTube channel. Just click on Graham Elwood on YouTube and it will come up. Because he's one of the few. He's covered Jeffrey Epstein case, Ghislaine Maxwell case, all the follow and Shrapnel from that. He's covered crypto. He's covered a lot of things. And real quick, you are the political vigilante. When is France coming to America? When are we storming BlackRock in America? When are we going to burn shit up? To be clear, YouTube, I'm not talking about violence, but France, you try to raise the retirement age by 2 years. You got a goddamn battalion out there of enraged people here, you can't get more than 100 people to come when they're poisoning your community or et cetera, et cetera.
I don't know. It's the $1 million question, Jordan. Like France just doesn't want to work an extra 2 years in the whole country. Every union, they shut it down. In this country, the gun deaths, the poisoned water, people still hungry, lost their jobs because of COVID, being thrown out of their homes. I mean, just like it's on and on in this country. Bankruptcy from Medicare, all this, medical debt, and I had Chris Edges on my show a couple months ago, and I asked him kind of a similar question, like, what's going to happen? He goes, I don't know. He goes, but I will say this, every revolution that I've ever covered, there was just some little event. The tinder was there, and then there was some little spark, they knocked over I think in Egypt, the Arab Spring was like somebody, they arrested a guy in a cart or some little event, like the first yellow vest thing, remember 4 years ago was like a 50-cent toll increase or something for cab drivers, and people just went nuts. So I don't know if there's going to be some little singular event that all Americans are going to go, I'm done. But they've done, I'd like that to happen. I have faith seeing the young people, the Gen Z people getting all of the Starbucks, almost at 300 Starbucks now have been unionized. That gives me hope, but then they're so sophisticated, the ruling elites, at keeping us all fighting with each other. I don't know.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me. Everybody check him out, GrahamElwood.com, Graham Elwood on YouTube. Let's have you back on soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jordan. Good to see you, brother.
No problem. Before I go to the audience, I have a personal request that hopefully will help you and Status Coup. If you are on Twitter, if you have a Twitter account, and Status Coup already has one Twitter direct messaging group. So if you're already part of that Twitter direct messaging group, this does not apply to you. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create 2 or 3 direct messaging groups, which are basically just like chat rooms, so that when we put out a tweet with our content, we could put it in each chat and immediately start getting a bunch of retweets. Because the more retweets you get quickly, the more chance you have for something to kind of go viral. So I just started our second direct message chat earlier today. And we want anyone who's not in our main one, we want to add you, if you're interested, into that chat. This is just a Twitter direct messaging group, basically to put our tweets in. Yeah, we could all have conversation and stuff too, but if you're interested, email us at info@statuscoup.com, your name and your Twitter handle, preferably with the link to your Twitter handle, and we will add you to that Twitter group. So just email us at info@statuscoup.com, your Twitter name, your name and your Twitter handle. So if your Twitter handle is at Jordan Chariton, just type that in, and if you could hyperlink it, so just go to the search bar and put in the link over it. I or somebody else can manually add you, and you'll start getting in your direct messages alerts from us when we put in a tweet. I'm hoping this will help because if we have 2 or 3 groups of Status Coup viewers, and most of you are retweeting our stuff at the same time, it will have a much better chance of going viral, possibly getting some hashtags started. So just email us at info@statuscoup.com, your name and your Twitter handle, and we'll do the rest. Simple enough? Good. And do it today if you can. info@statuscoup.com. Let's read some super chats. Double K 49.99. Holy cow. Thank you. Appreciate it. Dinor $20. Medicorp for all. FJG. Green New Deal. Hashtag learn MMT. Hashtag each one to each one. Thank you. Fly, Chopper, fly. $2. Truth, Jordan. This is where the USA is headed. I think you're talking about the child labor. It's fucking disgusting. Tanya H, €10. Super sticker. Thank you, Tanya. HO5. Super sticker. $5. Thank you, HO5. Humorous. $10. I would like to know what Jordan and Steve could enlighten us to who would be someone that this country should support for the 2024 election. I don't want any more Democrats or Republicans. Well, when we have Steve on next week, ask us again. I'm not going to tell you because I don't tell people how to vote. I don't think it's my role as a journalist. Steve probably would because he's more of a commentator. I can tell you who I personally like. I mean, in a Democratic primary, if I have a choice between Marianne Williamson and Biden, obviously I'm personally going to vote for Marianne Williamson 10 times out of 10 over Joe Biden. But, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. That's up to you. Thank you, humorous. Tanya H., €2, swear jar. Thank you. Fly Champa Fly, $2. About half the states allow marriage at 16. Fly Champa Fly, $2. Steve with the thumbs up. Thank you. Fly Champa Fly, $2. Yes, been asking where the evidence is for years. I think you're referring to the Epstein case. Fly Champa Fly, $2. Graham, don't ever give up. We need you. Graham's great. Big fan of Graham. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. 5 o'clock tomorrow will be me. And then at 6 o'clock, we're shifting around a little bit. So 5 o'clock will be me. And then right after me will be Kim Brown at 6 o'clock Eastern. So we'll see you back here tomorrow. And we are working on some things behind the scenes on East Palestine and other things. And if you're not a member yet, please consider signing up, statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Right now, I'm trying to put together a reporting trip where I would be on the road at the end of next week in Flint and Kalamazoo, Michigan, to cover the 9-year anniversary of the Flint water crisis and give you updates because it still is a crisis. And go to Kalamazoo. Kalamazoo, Michigan is being poisoned by a toxic gas being emitted by a paper mill. And then after that, we're trying to send Lewis back to East Palestine for his third trip. All of this costs money, funding on the ground, real independent reporting. So if it's within your means, sign up, statuscoup.com/join for $5 to $10 a month. Makes a huge difference. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Colin, behind the scenes. See you tomorrow.